Huge thank you for joining us today on our discussion, Embracing AI Without Losing Control. This is a lead dev panel. It's amazing to have you all join us today. It's a discussion created in partnership with Cloudflare. We do only have 45 minutes today. So if you have any questions, comments, discussions that you want to start up, we ask that you join our lead dev Slack group and post your questions, comments, etc. to the panel Q&A channel. We'll also have a chance to reply to any live questions that might come up during our webinar session today. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we'll get to them as we discuss different considerations for this panel today. To get started with some introductions, my name is Tiffany. I'll be your moderator today. I'm joined by these amazing panelists who will now introduce themselves. We can start with Julie, and then you all can unmute and share some introductions to why you're on the panel today.
Thank you, Tiffany. Julie Davila, I'm VP of Product Security at GitLab. At GitLab, we were essentially responsible for the security of our SDLC, both in terms of the supply chain, how software gets built and designed, all those good things, all the way through the operational environments that we own and manage for our customers, whether that's GitLab.com or federal environments, etc. My own background is pretty technical. It's really only been the last third of my career that's been in security. Before that, I spent a number of years in software engineering, infrastructure engineering, and did a little bit of time as a startup founder as well.
Maybe I can go next. My name is Gaurav. I'm an engineering manager at Databricks. Currently, I lead a platform engineering team focusing on building ingress and service-to-service communication for data and AI products at large scale. Before Databricks, I was leading a platform engineering team at Harness. And before that, I've done a lot of large-scale distributed, large-scale distributed systems at Google for the last 10 plus years. I'm excited about speaking in this panel because we have been adopting AI for all of our workflows, be it coding, debugging, testing, or removing toil from any of our workflows. And I'm happy to share my learnings with everyone.
And maybe I'll go next. So hi, I'm Tom, co-founder, CTO of Multiplayer. Multiplayer, we make tools for teams that work on distributed systems. We have a focus on helping them fix bugs with AI. My background is mainly as a back-end software engineer for most of my career, but got my start in robotics, machine learning, speech recognition, and really excited to share what we've been doing with AI and a lot of the stuff we've learned by trying to make this technology kind of work.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. Michael Gustafson, solutions engineer at Cloudflare. I'd say I'm pretty much a builder at heart. Been a builder, building all kinds of interesting stuff all my life. Most recently come from AWS and HashiCorp, also solutions engineering type roles. And being at Cloudflare and around AI a lot, security around AI is top of mind for us every day. So I'm looking forward to an interesting discussion today.
Certainly. Looking very forward to this discussion. There are so many perspectives that you all are going to bring to the panel today, so I really look forward to that. I think to frame this conversation, I'd love to hear from each of you, and we can start with Julie on what does losing control with AI mean in your world? I know you all have worked on a variety of different things. I'd love to just frame it in what does it mean when you lose control with AI?
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent question. And I think for me, when I think about what is it that makes us feel safe about a given system, it's really, or the concepts surrounding it's predictability. I do a thing and it's going to do this thing in result. And with AI, you really lose a lot of that determinism that we've all kind of been accustomed to. And so it introduces this amount of vagueness where the same input 100 times might net you 100 different results that are all slightly different from each other. So then how do you take that into account when you're thinking about things like logic or how it interacts with the broader system? And for me, losing control is in this context is really about how your ability to grasp or not grasp that sort of non-determinism that's present with a lot of these like AI mechanics.
Yeah, maybe I can add something to it. I guess losing control is a very wide term. And with having a background in the platform engineering, I myself has acted as an enabler for other developers, other product teams to leverage AI. And the things that worried us the most was, oh, can I predict what my cost of using LLMs is going to be? Do we understand what are the usage patterns across the company, how people are interacting with LLMs, and can we optimize the processes for them? Do we have enough security and governance guardrails built so that with all these MCP integrations, we are not providing unjustified access to people who are not supposed to access those systems, right? So that's the platform engineering aspect of it. But as a consumer, another angle to losing control is, are we over relying on AI? Are we replacing genuine thought with trusting LLMs to write code for us? And can that lead to more bugs and or maybe bad decisions creeping into our systems? Yes, I guess it's a combination of both. As an enabler, as a usage, I have different concerns coming from and different areas where I feel like we can potentially lose control.
Yeah, and just to sort of add a little bit to that, as a developer, there's just there's just so much new that can go wrong. I mean, you have to always think as a developer, like, what is the bug that can, I might be accidentally adding to this code. But because things are non-deterministic, it's not like you can find and fix something and know that it'll be fixed forever. There's just a whole class of stuff that could go wrong, security issues, and as a result, I think, what you have to do as a developer, as part of a development team, as an operator, as a DevOps person, you have to do things more defensively. If you're a coder, you've got to code defensively. If you're running things, you have to put guardrails around code that you might not have had to do with code that just sort of runs in a orderly fashion. You have to really think about the blast radius of if something goes wrong, like how can it spread, and just lock it down. So, for me, that I spend a lot of time thinking about that and making sure that any feature that is released has those guardrails. And I've thought creatively about what new thing could go wrong as a result of prompt engineering with an agentic workflow that has access to tools. You have to think about it all together and not in order to not lose control of your entire system.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I think it's very tied to kind of what my customers come and talk to me about on the daily, pretty much around security in AI, right? And one very obvious thing that is going on right now is essentially that shadow AI is essentially the new shadow IT, right? So today, losing control pretty much means a lot of team members are using AI in some way, shape, or form that IT staff not even know exist, right? They had zero time to assess the impact of usage, right? But teams are already implementing it and using it, right? And I think from a security perspective, it's also quite common nowadays that, I mean, data leaks through prompts are probably a bigger issue or a more common issue right now than your average attacks that you might have seen in the past, right? So someone pasting source code or customer data into an LLM, right? That's really tricky areas to navigate, where you kind of have to think about how you actually secure and kind of protect yourself against those. And to piggyback to what Tom said, AI agents, right? You have MCPs, and you create all of this invisible kind of lateral movements across system as well, where you might not have really thought of that in the past, but now it's kind of non-deterministic, right? Stuff starts happening across a bunch of systems and you have no idea about this, right? So those are very common aspects that my customers kind of talk to me about, I'd say.
Yeah, and wonderful points. There was a lot that was mentioned around safety and feeling secure. So I'd love to just have a follow-up question around that. How and what do you do, to put guardrails in place? Are there frameworks or processes or tools that can help ensure that teams are kind of innovating with AI in a safe and effective manner?
I think from my perspective, the biggest challenge there is oftentimes the biggest challenge outside of this arena, and that's the concept of identity and how we think about it, right? And I think for each organization, it's going to look a little bit different. If you're an organization that produces software and leverages agentic identities or platforms that have some kind of agentic capabilities to help you produce that software, that's one consideration. But then you also have like your corporate stuff, like are you using it to do some automation around how you do marketing or finance or onboarding people? Those sorts of things, and how you think about identity throughout the different sort of verticals of your business, I think is a really critical piece. And right now, I think we're seeing kind of the emergence of a lot of the incumbent vendors, new players, open source tools that are really trying to help organizations get a handle at this place. And really, I think at this point, the only wrong answer is to not be thinking about it at all. As the industry collectively is really trying their best to make sense of like what is really the ideal approach here with identity.
Love that.
Yeah, and I, just to add, I coming back to this notion of like, the guardrails, it's I don't know that there's a particular framework or something like a magic project. You could just say, oh, I'll just add this, and suddenly it's like you've got a secure agent that won't go off the rails with billing and usage and all this other things. I think it is more of a general, develop acknowledging as when you're developing, software that relies on AI or has AI at the core, agents, and you are also perhaps as a DevOps person, operating these things to be just extra paranoid, that like the framework is add paranoia to your way of, developing and thinking about things. And also thinking about, I think it makes sense to think in terms of the identity too. What is this thing that you're developing how is it going to act? Almost treating it as its own person. And just like you wouldn't give a junior developer keys to the production database, right? You have to think about how do you put boundaries around the software that you're developing or you're running, watching things, monitoring things, getting that feedback in ways that you don't really have to think about with regular software. So it's more of a philosophical change in software development that I'm starting to see with as more and more companies use this technology.
Yeah, I think excellent points, Thomas. Maybe I can add you mentioned two different things here, right? You talked about how we can have a system of guardrails, and second thing you mentioned, like how can we really paranoid in DevOps. I have something to add to both of those points. Talking about guardrails, I think one of the things we did at Harness was we tried to centralize the access to all of the LLMs through some sort of AI gateway. And I see this is becoming more and more common with companies coming with like products where you have a central gateway where you can build various guardrails, and all developers are channeling their queries through it, right? So with such a system, you can envision you have some sort of rate limiting going on, you have audit logging, you can build access control, you can log who's accessing what, you can monitor the cost. All right. So, and it also provides a standard way to access different LLM. Like for example, if you want to access Claude and ChatGPT, but it's all the same interface. So having something central to funnel all the requests, I think that's one thing maybe various companies can adopt. Another thing that I believe it's going to become more and more important, like companies like GitLab, Harness, they are going to play a critical role at this, is that DevOps has to be really, really tight, right? So if AI is writing code for us, I guess the probability of going something wrong is increasing like much more, and developers might not even know, right? So the other in addition to the tools, the best practices around doing your integration testing, your unit tests, continuously integrating your code, having the best practices around releases, ensuring all the new features are going out with feature flags so that it's very easy for you to revert certain features back. Right. So
Yeah.
I think all the things that we knew we have to do, they're just becoming more and more important on the DevOps space with AI coming into picture.
And I'd just love to just riff on that for a second. This notion of change and how do you manage change? I'd love to hear from others, like how they do this. But like, even if you're doing some simple feature that does prompt engineering, you could make a tweak to a prompt that breaks it. You think you're improving, but it's actually breaking things, right? So this notion of incorporating evals and embracing the variability of these features is like, very, very important. That's part of this sort of philosophical, change to the development process that I think is really important. And it's not until you actually try to make this stuff work in production that you really, and then you try to change it, that you're like, oh my God, like whoops, this thing was working. I changed this wording a little bit. Now it's broken. So being defensive with evals and also feedback from users, because something that works in development, it's out in production, your users are using it. Having that feedback loop becomes even more important, for just is a feature working well or not. But I'm curious what others are finding on managing change.
I think in practical terms, from a Cloudflare perspective, I mean, Gura was actually quite on point in kind of what I see common patterns. I wouldn't even call it frameworks nowadays, or just yet. It's more common patterns, right? Where you almost have to funnel all of these API calls through some sort of a central system. Because I mean, in this fragmented world that it is right now, it's quite hard to gain control in any other way, right? It would be really hard to build something to solve that without centralizing all of that. So that kind of goes to, I mean, you need visibility in all of this to get control, right? And how else are you going to do that unless you proxy all your prompts essentially through some central gateway or something, right? I mean, there's so many providers nowadays, whether you go Anthropic or OpenAI, you name it, right? How are you else going to do that, right? But that also kind of ties back into productivity and kind of standardization on things, right? So because how are you going to provide guardrails to all of these different vendors, right? You need some unified, standardized sort of way of actually being able to do that. And then to exactly what Julie mentioned, right? Identity in all of this, right? How are you going to be able to tie identity into all of this unless you have some sort of a central AI gateway, I would say. So to me, I mean, Gura was quite on point. I think the AI gateway approach and centralizing or funneling, I should say, funneling all of this through some sort of AI gateway is currently the pattern that I see having the most success, pretty much.
Julie, it sounded like you had something to add as well.
It really echoes what Michael said. I mean, even like from a GitLab platform perspective, AI Gateway is also kind of an approach we're taking, right? Like we have our own kind of, we've open sourced how we're approaching that. And, for us, we have like the additional nuance consideration of like, okay, what does an AI gateway mean when you have to support, a 50 million plus user base for like a SaaS platform, but then also need one that can be bundled for your organizations that maybe have 200 people in the organization that they need a service with a self-managed instance. And then it gets like really interesting from an architectural perspective. But regardless, the underlying primitive and concept of what the AI gateway represents and what it's intended to help facilitate, I mean, still applies here.
So I think there's two themes that I had heard from you all's conversation that I want to drill into. But also if anyone in the attendees list has any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to put them in the Q&A. We can pull questions from there. I'd love to touch on the idea of this cultural or philosophical shift, because I think that's a big part of introducing AI into teams and organizations, right? And kind of moving together as a group. How do you integrate AI tools into existing workflows or processes without overwhelming or distracting teams? I'd love to hear you all talk about maybe like some stories or practical approaches to doing this for any of our attendees listening in.
Well, I'll start with we start slowly, and I think that's probably the best thing to do. I mean, there's so many great tools out there that you can experiment with and see, adding could, add some value to development velocity or automating certain things that was manual. But I think it can also be overwhelming, the amount of choice that's available. So we sort of have just looked at what are some of the kind of pain points where, in the development process where maybe AI could help and where it could be a baby step to, getting some value. So, AI coding IDEs, that's a nice, first step. We at Multiplayer are doing a debugging agent, so, the idea of like getting your bugs fixed behind the scenes is, something we hope people will like to have in the short list. There are other projects we've adopted. So, from a security perspective, doing things in sandboxes is very important. So there are some good projects out there where we've adopted some technology. But I would say, we start slowly and gradually.
And if you're enjoying this, LeadDev has a ton more to offer.
I'm quite fond of the articles.
I feel like LeadDev blogs are my favorite, and it's been really, really useful to kind of create these more meaningful connections as well.
If there's something you're struggling with as an engineering leader, there's a pretty good chance that LeadDev has published something that addresses it.
So make sure you check out leaddev.com.
Yeah, maybe I can add something here. I guess like one of the things I've seen developers struggle with, I think there is a resistance at large scale for people to adopt AI. And one thing that I've seen work really well is you bring AI as close as possible to their existing workflows. I think Thomas already alluded to it, that having something like having an AI ID where AI is embedded, that's a great start. But somebody has a resistance. "Oh, I don't want to now use a new ID. Can I maybe have AI sitting next? Can I have a Claude agent running in my favorite AI, my favorite ID?" So I guess every company has a list of most common IDs or some tools that developers prefer. So as a platform, as a provider, as an enabler, we need to bring these tools as close as possible to their existing workflows, because then even the people who are slightly resistant, it may be just AI is just a click away for them, right? And once they try it, then they start seeing the advantage, and that's how they get hooked. And it doesn't feel like I have to go learn something new and it's gonna be wasting my day-to-day time, right? So but once they start using it, it becomes like second nature to them, and they want AI everywhere after that. I guess, yeah, the TLDR for me would be bring AI as close as possible to their existing workflows. It can be challenging as an enabler, but I guess that's where we can start getting more and more adoption.
To share my point of view, I think these are all great points. I think one of the things to consider is that for most organizations, the introduction of AI is just going to amplify how they already operate, for better or for worse. And when we think about what is overwhelming or distracting teams, one can almost see this to the degree that they have articulated the value stream mapping within their engineering workflows and what it means to actually deliver a unit of value to their own customer base, whether that's a SaaS platform, something they bundle, whatever it may be. And when you introduce AI into this workflow, it's either going to make that happen a lot faster, or it's going to make your bottlenecks be even more obvious, whether your bottlenecks are in QA or your bottlenecks are in your build pipeline or your bottlenecks are in your security review process, right? Like AI is really going to help shine the light there, and AI is not going to get you out of it unless you do the work of thinking strategically, like what needs to happen from a process standpoint to be able to handle the increase in inputs that AI facilitates across the different parts of the SDLC. And for me, like whatever the tool that may be, like that's effectively the mental model that needs to be taken into account to make it effective and get long-term sustainable ROI.
Yeah, and I think it's, tying back to this cultural shift that we're kind of talking about here, I think it's to a large extent also about giving developers safe access, right? Instead of just more blockers, right? We want them to be able to use all of this amazing new tooling, but do it in a safe way and make sure they do not F up, right, unintentionally. And trying to simplify all of those messy parts, right? Centralized tokens across multiple vendors and providers, having cost visibility, reliability, flaky APIs between different services and so on, right? So I think that's very common in terms of how I see and what I think about in terms of how you would integrate that into existing workflows nowadays, pretty much.
I guess maybe another small thing I can add is one more thing I've seen work really well just to increase adoption is success stories. Like Databricks is a large enough company. The people started using it in pockets, and there were a lot of large scale migrations getting done leveraging AI. Things that would have taken an order of quarters, those were done in weeks. And I think those kind of success stories really were really helpful to bring a lot of people on board, and people started to see, oh, this can also be done with AI. I couldn't even imagine such a use case can be tackled so easily. So sharing those success stories in your all hands or in our weekly forums within the teams, I guess that can be another good way for us to help with the adoption of AI in our teams.
I love that you mentioned success stories because that was something that recently happened in my organization. So at Yahoo, there was an org that had just done essentially like a short sprint, but they called it an AI hackathon. And they tried to get as many different things done as possible powered by AI. And then they wrote like a one pager in a Confluence like wiki page, and then shared it like not only amongst themselves, but also to like other verticals and other orgs, and it inspired a bunch of other people to do something very, very similar. So I'm curious, like, do you all have any success stories that you'd like to mention, either something that you've seen happen in your own org or in the past? I'd love to hear just more success stories. Maybe that's something that like attendees can also share with, their own teams as well.
We have an interesting situation going on right now, I'd say, with the democratization, however you pronounce that, of coding, right? Essentially internally now, what we see is that a lot of different teams that would never normally develop their own applications actually start doing that, right? Because they realize the superpower that this actually means, right? So they can solve their immediate application and service needs right now. But as Julie mentioned, right, this kind of showcases or amplifies your biggest bottlenecks instead, right? Because now you have to go through internal QA, it's AppSec, it's integration to internal systems and all of that, right? But it is truly exciting to see internally how people, that are not natively developers, right, but how they can kind of come up with new ideas and new ways of actually building systems at amazing blazing pace right now. So I mean, it's really exciting times to be alive right now, to be honest, and seeing all of this firsthand.
Yeah, I can share quite a few stories. There were maybe two major points. I think one thing I'll piggyback on what Michael said. Typically, you won't see managers writing a lot of code day to day, but with AI now it's just so trivial. Like all I have to do is I have to sit with Claude for some time or certain tools that we built on top of it, and just tell it what needs to happen. And all the smaller things that I would have to chase people to get it done, the 1% day efforts, those just get done on the side, and my PR counts have increased considerably, right? Not me, like, and that's a pattern across the board, right? So a lot of the smaller things which would be like smaller paper cuts will stay for a very long time because they never get prioritized. I think those are getting done much quicker. And second thing is, like, we used to have this culture of running these decentralized migrations where a platform team has to go chase 15 product teams. Hey, we have this security thing. Everybody has to do something in their code base, right? So those things would run quarter over quarter, and a VP has to go chase five other directors, right? All of that is not there anymore because a central team can go sit with AI, really get the process nailed down, and then these things are happening in order of weeks now with the central team migrating, and then each individual product team is just going and reviewing the code. So there are massive productivity gains coming from all the things that non-cool projects that people were running away from doing it. I think those are becoming much easier to tackle with AI.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add our own kind of story of what AI is helping us. I mean, this is providing to our customers, but I, as a developer and founder of a company, there's a reason why I started Multiplayer. One is, that it's really hard to fix bugs that happen in distributed systems. There's a lot of manual work. There's a lot of, if you have end users and they're complaining about a bug, there's they have to write down steps to reproduce and send you screenshots, and then I have to reproduce those steps, and I have to go into an observability tool and find data and grep through. I mean, I don't know how many months of my life I've wasted like grepping through logs over my entire career, but it's like way too many. So, one way we solve that is, the short story is having full stack session recordings where we pull all the data together. But the value of that is then you've got everything that an AI agent or coder would need to say, okay, this is what happened in the session, and I know where the bug is. I know where in the source code it is. And, it's been fantastic to be able to like take that grunt work of trying to find evidence of a bug and figure out where it is to fix it, and just have it be done automatically. So that's we see our customers pretty happy with seeing that grunt work and that manual work go away. So.
To share something from our side, so GitLab runs what I consider a relatively robust bug bounty program. It's one of the programs that is part of my organization. We're not certainly not the biggest in the industry, but we do pay out about $1.3 million a year in bug bounty payouts, and that is predicated on a lot of work around triaging, routing, working with engineering teams. A lot of this kind of like toil work, for lack of better words. And so we've started to implement a lot of AI use cases around helping us make that better. And for us, I think within the last month or so, we kind of got to a place where we're like kind of consistently at zero in terms of like backlog of bug bounty reports, kind of triage and route and facilitate. So that's been really good to see, and was historically kind of just a big source of time consumption within the team members of my PCERT team. So it's been good overall so far for us.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everybody for sharing some success stories. I know that there's many more. I know for folks that are kind of tuning in too, that there's been, a lot just all over the internet about success stories. And that's really great that AI can help in so many different kinds of workflows and scenarios. I'd love to, take it several steps back now and, talk about starting an AI journey. What if you're in a team not using AI, what piece of advice would you give to a team that's just starting out?
I think from my side, I would sort of think about kind of like what is the metric that you want to move in a positive direction, and what's the one that's going to keep you in check, right? And that was kind of earlier to my point around AI multiplying whatever good or bad things you have going on organizationally. So for me, it's like, okay, sure, like if you want to do a metric of like how much code you produce, but then it's like how many things are in the backlog of like PR reviews with your senior principal kind of staff level engineering folks, like are they now behind on the staff, and like what is the health metric that keeps your AI utilization a little bit grounded and more down to earth in with regards to like the operational realities of your team, of your org, whatever program you run.
Yeah, and I guess I would just add to that. It's a great point. Just focusing on trying to figure out what the biggest pain point is, and sort of whether it or pain points, and whether it and being honest about what large language models are actually good at, and seeing whether there's a fit there. Not just blindly saying, oh, we can do this, we can do that, we can do the other thing, but again, start slow, start small, highest impact, and with some honesty about what AI can do for that particular use case, and then when it's implemented, or when you're implementing it, like again, the guardrails, like, okay, where could this go wrong? Because you don't want to say, okay, this really painful process that we have could benefit from AI in this way. Suddenly it gets worse because the implementation wasn't well thought through. So
yeah, I guess Julie and Thomas both had kind of mentioned what would I like. I would also like to say, I guess pick an area, start small, and start investing there slowly. But I guess one advice that I got from one of our engineering leaders that I felt was very, very useful. He mentioned that don't be skeptical, be curious. I guess that kind of stuck with me. Like AI brings in a lot of new things and we all are skeptical, but I guess starting small and being curious and slowly starting to integrate it into our processes, I guess that's what has really worked for us. And yeah, so maybe that's something that's a very small advice if somebody can, it might be useful to all others also.
I'll go a bit against the stream here. I'll actually say that you should break things, fail fast, reiterate, and plow ahead. Sandbox, of course, first of all, right? Don't go production with anything, right? But because this is such a new area where it's kind of hard to understand from the get-go what the capabilities are going to be. You're going to have assumptions about this if you're net new kind of on this journey, but those are all going to be guesstimates and assumptions, right? Which is, in my experience, break things, fail fast, make sure to do it in safe environments, because that's going to give you a really good idea of kind of the capabilities that then enables the kind of, exactly like Tom mentioned, right? What are the areas that we are then going to actually go for production, and what is actually an honest use case where we can actually have some tangible output.
Yeah, and I guess a company hackathon can be a great way to do it. Like,
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, that's where we started at Harness. We bootstrapped with our company Harness. There was no AI usage anywhere, and there were like 15 great ideas came out of it. And I guess most of them eventually got to production. So yeah, maybe that could be one way to start it.
Yeah, I know we're light on questions, so I want to ask you all as leaders in your own rights, on your projects, on your teams, for your orgs, what kind of role do you think that you play in introducing AI or influencing an AI journey for a team? I'd love to just hear more about like the leadership take of it.
Yeah, maybe I can. Sorry,
ahead,
sorry.
Gaurav.
Go. Yeah, I think one of the things that I feel has been helpful is I myself had started adopting AI for various things I do. For example, it could be from performance management to like writing weekly reports, right? So you start using AI, you start talking about it at the lunch table, like that. So you, and then there is this whole uh, push that comes from the leadership when people like I am writing code, I am showing evidence. This is something has been in our backlog for 6 months, and see, I just got it done. And then that kind of gives confidence to developers. Oh, this is working. Maybe I could also try these things out. And I guess that so leading with from the front, I guess that's maybe the TLDR of what I'm trying to say. You show it to developers that I'm able to do it. Maybe it will help you even more in your day-to-day journey.
Yeah, I echo that as well. I think lead by example is very much what you have to do, right? Low key show what a 10x engineer actually is, and then people are kind of by default going to be curious at how did Gaurav actually make all of this happen in this small amount of time? I mean, what's the workflow here? So it kind of happens by default at that point, right? So yeah.
I'll add a little bit of a unique perspective in terms of where I sit in terms of like my own leadership responsibility. I think having the privilege of working for GitLab, it sits at a unique place in the industry in the sense that how we reason about agentic AI security has a cascading impact on software factories of thousands of organizations, right? So it's like not just us, it's kind of the organization, but also us. And so when we think about this, it's like it's influencing like, okay, like what should be, our North Star in terms of how we're approaching these sets of challenges? How do we operationalize it within how we produce software? And what is the downstream cascading impact to our open source community, our customers, et cetera, in terms of how they adopt stuff? So it really creates sort of a five-dimensional game of chess a bit in terms of how we have to think through the challenges. And it's something that I think it's important, especially as you consider, having to take care of customers that are 5-person startups or major airlines and banks and institutions around the world.
And I guess all I'd add is as the CTO of a small startup, I get to be pretty cutting edge and dream about the future and like try things and I think it as a leader, as a technical leader of any size company, and think about AI, you have to be involved, like everybody's talking about. You have to really embrace it in order to understand the limits and if their capabilities. And then, then the rest of it, I think, is, whatever's appropriate for your organization and helping your team to go in pointing in the right direction. This is just AI is one of those directions, and setting I don't know whether it's the product direction or feature direction or whatever it is, the guardrails that your particular company needs to put around any features that you have. Just being aware of all of this stuff and communicating with the rest of your team is important.
Yeah, I love that like nod to the managerial level where you're then, like you have this vision or you're communicating the vision and you're bringing it back to your teams. So I want to thank all of our panelists today, Julie, Gaurav, Tom, and Michael, for your insights. And thank you to everybody in the audience who is joining us. I know that we had a chance to talk about common mistakes, ways to kind of shift the culture around AI, how to introduce it without losing control. So I hope that this answered a lot of questions that you all might have had about this discussion point or shared additional perspectives to the conversation. We'll be heading over to the Lead Dev Slack group. There is also the Q&A channel where our panelists will also join and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you all for joining. We hope to see you next time.